Hello everyone, and in today's video we'll be adding gameplay features to our main menu system. Okay, so to start, as we're going to be making a user interface for settings that affect our gameplay, the first thing that we need to do is to create a reference to whichever player character you create. So we need to get our player character that you'll have got set in your game mode. And because I'm doing it from the third person template, like many of you will be copying me from, we're going to cast to the third person character and drag that in there. And then we just want to promote this to a variable. But I've already got one from the test I did before, so I'm just going to drag mine out and plug it in. And now any setting or variable that we make inside of our player, we can now have access to in UI. So for example, if I just type in set, say if we had a setting for the movement mode, which we wouldn't have, but we could now set it in our user interface. Right, and now onto the UI. In the first episode, I set all these as canvas panels. But we're actually going to change this because if we have too many options and it goes off the panel, we just won't be able to see them. So we're going to swap it with something called a scroll box, which is just in our panel window. And I'm going to show you a trick. If we select the scroll box and then we right click our panel, gameplay panel in our hierarchy, we have this replace with option. And because we have the scroll box selected in our palette, with just a click, it will now turn it into a scroll box. As you can see, it snapped our text up top, and here the icon has changed. So we're going to want to delete our text. And now we're going to want to get a canvas panel. And the reason why we're using a canvas panel is because canvas panels give you the most freedom of placement. And so here we can format kind of like what we want a row in this list to look like. So with these settings, most of the time the format we're going to go for is a title, a slider or a drop down box, and then another text box showing the value of the slider or the combo box is selected. So we'll just get that set up. So we get a text block, and we're gonna, if we click F2 to change the actual name of the text, we're just gonna call this our option title. And then we're going to get a slider. Put that out a bit, and as you can see, we can drag it out and set the length, which in most of the panel options we won't be able to do. And we're going to call this slider. And then we're going to get another text right next to it, and we're going to call this our option value. And we've given all these like very default names, and that is because I will change the canvas to option format slider, and we'll make an option format drop down. But now we can just duplicate this, and we have this format to make as many times as we want. So I'll keep the second one just because I'm about to make changes to this one now. And the first thing we're going to make is sensitivity options for looking around, for the character when they look around. So select our text, and we're going to set this differently in the X and the Y. So our text, we're going to have sensitivity X. And our slider, because it, as you see here, when we set the text, it kind of changed the name here, the title, to whatever our text is. But we're going to have to change the whole name of this slider. So underscore there we go. And it's good to name all your things appropriately because we are going to be calling on them later. And we're actually going to set this text in the blueprint, but just for naming purposes. Right, and now we actually want to make some adjustments inside of our slider. And we actually want to set the minimum and maximum value. So we'll do it from 0.5 to 1.5, and that way our default 1 will just be right in the middle. And that is our first column sorted. So now we actually want to set this up so that it works. So our main setting options. And quickly before I start, I'm just going to give this a slightly different colour, just because it makes it a lot easier to differentiate. I'm going to make an option for our gameplay settings. You know, I'm also going to take this so it shows us all the names. I'm going to make this blue. Okay, so I'm just going to type in the name of the option that we're setting just so that we have access to it. And you'll find that we don't have our other text for the value. And that is because a lot of the time with some of the things we create in the UI, we actually need to create it as a variable. So now if we go back into our graph, let's see, it didn't show up then. Oh, okay, so setting the name like that doesn't change it. Also, we'll have to name this. Next. There we go. So we want to get our value and our slider. Although with our slider actually we want on value change, there it is. And so now whenever we change our slider, it will call this event. So first, because it's the only option we have, type in and set text. And if we plug this into the set text, now whatever this comes in as is what this will come up as, and we want to change our minimum fractional digits to 1, because otherwise we'll just get a load of decimal points. So and because we changed in our scroll box, it's made this invalid. So set this to is a variable. Let's see if that fixes it. No, we need to scroll this over. And swap this out. There we go. And now if we quickly just... Oh, we've still got some... Oh, that's why. So we need to change it every time. There we go. Right, now we can get them. So we go into our settings. You'll see that now, yeah, the text sets itself to whatever the slider's value is. Although it's not rounding it like we wanted it to. So let's have another look. Oh, so we want to set the maximum, not the minimum. There we go. And now we have this that we can set up to change the sensitivity. But right now it's not actually doing anything. So we need to go into our character. So there's our move options. And what we're going to do here is plug in a multiply. And we want to create two variables. So this will be our X sensitivity. This will be our Y. And now we'll actually be able to call on these variables inside of our main menu. So if we get our third person character, get our value from our event. And there we go, now we have our first option set up. And so now we'll set up our Y. And we'll change this around. Sensitivity X doesn't make as much sense as it does the other way around. And because of this column will be very similar to the one below, we'll just duplicate it. So set this to Y. This doesn't need changing, and that doesn't need changing either. And then we can just completely copy most of this. Although this does need a name change. And we'll just swap this around again. Our Y sensitivity, get our custom event. Do the exact same thing we did before. Right, and now that's two of our options set up, although we do need to change this. And if we have it selected, you'll see as soon as we go into the graph, it will be selected there as well, which makes life a lot easier. Right, and now we have the settings for our sensitivity set up. And then the next one that we're going to create, let's do it in here first, just because I want to see if the setting is already there. And it is, although that's setting it, we're going to get and there, as you can see, we can also set options inside of our camera. There we go. And next option we're going to make is to set the camera's field of view. And so right, change this to FOV. Option slider. Although actually, just before I do anything, I want to duplicate this again, just so that then I have this clean format. So, OV. Then in our slider, we want it to be from 60 to 120. And our default value, 100, or is it 90? Yeah. And at default, it's going to be 100, so set to 100. And actually, yeah, we're going to set all these texts to the default value. So that'll look a lot cleaner. And then just look at the names for this and how they work. Yeah, they're right. Change this to the correct thing. Right. Type in FOV. Control V to get our slider so we can get our event. Where are our events? There we go. And promote our text to a variable. And with this, we don't want any decimals. And then we also just want to put that in there. And this actually gives me an opportunity to show you something else. So as much as we set it in the text so we can never see if it's gone into a decimal point, go into our slider, we can also set step size, which means if we move it, right now it moves in 0.01 increments, but if we only want it to go at 1 each time, it now will. And then we also want to click mouse uses step. And so now this will never go into decimal places. Right, and now just to add a few more to bulk this up, I'm sure if we get our follow camera, I think it's actually, camera boom. But there is a set enable camera lag. And what this does inside the camera is that if we move the camera instead of it doing it perfectly, it almost kind of follows the direction you're going in, just give it a smoother feel. And it could just be a nice like immersive setting that you could add into your games. And so with that, first things first, we don't want to do it in here. So just so we have this saved, we'll duplicate this over again. Right, and instead of a slider, we go into our inputs, common, where is it? Checkbox, that's what we want to change it to. We're going to change it to a checkbox. And put it in the middle. Option check, I'm going to call this. Option check underscore camera lag. And our text. Option camera lag. On state changed, we now have an event for that. I'm going to create a branch. And if it is checked once it's been clicked, we want to enable. And if not, we're going to disable. And then we get our text, go to a variable. We need to remember to do that before, and we're just going to type in here instead. And off. Alright, that's our third setting. And then now, next we're actually going to set it up so that the sensitivity of this lag can be changed as well. Set camera lag speed. And then, so good practice, we're going to duplicate this again, even though this is going to be the last set we add to the gameplay. But just in case we want to put it in the other panels. Change this to lag speed, just like the variable's called, and just want to go into the camera lag. So the default is 10. So you might want to test around the character to see what range works for you, but I'm going to have the base value is 10, the minimum value is 0, and the one is 20. Oh, so I'll change this to off. Lag speed 10. And now, another thing we want to do is, I'm sure, yeah, so there's an option to disable our slider. Although I'm not seeing an option in the editor to do it. So we must have to do it inside of the blueprint. Change these first. And the reason why we're going to disable it is because we only want to edit it if this is true. So when we tick it as true, we're going to enable this column. So get right, it's not giving me an option to do it anywhere. Okay, so I think I've set it. Set is enabled. So now that we actually know what it's called, maybe There we go. And from default, we'll turn that off. And we'll do it for all of them. So now just test if we play it. Settings. Yeah, you'll see this is completely blacked out and we can't edit it. So now we just need to make it so that we change this. This enables. Stop playing. Get this node now. So whenever this is ticked, and actually, I think we can actually make this a little bit smarter. So if it's true, plug that in there, move that out of the way. And now because we've done that, we actually don't need this whole second option. So we want the slider, and we want the other ones too. So the value, although that's actually for the other ones, isn't it? Yeah. And we also need to set this to a variable because we're going to enable and disable it. Make a reroute there. There we go. Right, and so now that should all be set up so that we can enable and disable that whole column. And now we just want to set up this slider. Oh. And with that, I don't think we want any decimal points either. And I think we'll also get it set up that if we disable the option, then we'll set it back to default. So default was 10. Be true, 10, and a 4. Oh, I suppose we don't need to select. No matter what, just whenever this button's interacted with, we'll reset the camera and the text. And that's little things that you need to be important for checking when you're doing user interface. If you're changing variables in different places, you need to make sure to change everything that represents the variable as well. And with that, now we have a few settings for how we can change gameplay with our user interface. And obviously there's many more that can be added that may be specific to the game that you're making, but for now this kind of just shows off how we can pull out different things from our player's blueprint, how we can use sliders in different ways, formats in different ways. And with that, next time we're going to get into the graphical settings, which is probably the most important panel that we're going to work with. Oh, and before we leave off, just need to make sure, just like I was just saying, we're also going to need to change the value of this slider. So if we get our option slider lag speed, it's playing. Get and then set value. We also want to plug that in. Because when we forget to do things like this, that's when inconsistencies come in. So now, well, it's not actually changing it. So it might be that when we disable this, it does it all for us. No, so something's going on. Maybe we need to put all these things in manually for whatever reason. I'm not sure why it's doing it like that, but we go and we turn it off, it goes back to 10. Right, brilliant, and that's everything that we're going to cover today. We've gone over how to format our user interfaces by combining different panel types together, making different types of options work together, how to disable options and enable them, and working with different kinds of inputs. And so we'll leave it there. Obviously, your gameplay options are very specific to whatever project you're making. So I've just added a few examples. You may need more, you may need less. But with that, next time, we're going to get onto our graphics panel, which is probably the most important panel that we'll be working with. And so with that, I'll see you next time.